Hi everyone, this is going to be the final video that will be required for the course. So in it I'm going to do a couple of things. I'll review the answers to Morse from 2005, and then we'll move on to the final text we'll be thinking about, and that's going to be by Michael Klein, published in 2004 on Chopin. So more on that when we get to it. In the accompanying email, of course, you'll note that I've given some guidance as to the date and time required for the second submission. Be the same length as the first submission, but in this case perhaps a bit less challenging, because all I'm asking you to do is to provide a synthetic summary of the three music-specific texts that we've addressed in the second half of the course. So of course that's going to be Nattier, and then Morse, and then finally Klein. Now I'm not going to cover all of Klein. I'll cover roughly a third of it towards a half. So the remainder you need to formulate your own opinions on, to include them in the survey, but regard that perhaps as a research element, which I would normally expect from the second submission, but this time we can't really go into that in depth. There just isn't time, and of course the circumstances are totally different. So let's just look through those responses to Morse first of all. Basically they were fine, but there were four of them maybe that could just be tightened up a little bit. Question 1, the temporal dimension that Morse regards as appropriate for the way in which listeners imagine the events in a musical plot, that was present time. So present time you needed to have for question 1. Question 5, this was maybe my fault, but trying to phrase it properly, I asked, does McClary explicitly believe that her listening experiences of something that listeners should be conscious of? No, she doesn't explicitly believe that, whereas Marian Guck does. But as Morse points out, the mere fact that we read them means that if we go back to the piece, we can, of course, listen to the piece in the way that McClary encourages us to think the piece actually itself works. But she doesn't say you must now think of this as your own listening experience along with me. So the answer to that question was, strictly speaking, no. Question 6. What's the related concept that Morse then proceeds to characterize with respect to Anthony Newcomb's sense of the multi-movement design in Schumann's Second Symphony? So the phrase there is plot archetype. So plot archetype was the answer to question 6. And the only other question that led to a bit of confusion was question 8. Which performance does Morse consider to be the closest to Berlioz's account? Toscanini's first performance, 1933, that he refers to, or Rodzinski in 44. It was the Toscanini 1933 performance he thinks is closest to Berlioz's imagining of what the development section of Beethoven 5 first movement really represents. Okay, so basically fine, no one sort of desperately confused by that, which is great. So let's move on now to Klein, and the title of Michael's article is Chopin's Fourth Ballade as Musical Narrative, and I'm going to cover pages 23 to 35. And this is regarded as one of the most successful interpretations of music as a narrative construct. So it's quite an extended article, but makes a lot of very salient and intelligent musical points. Altogether, I'm going to ask 8 questions this time, so let's begin on page 23. So Klein opens by reviewing some of the positions that we've already encountered for and against musical narratology. So that includes Nattier and also a reference to Adorno. In the event, Michael Klein notes that perhaps music appears caught in a shadow realm between mimesis and diegesis, i.e. music isn't able to fully imitate real-world events, that's mimesis, or to relate them discursively, that's diegesis. However, he does think that some of this restriction is lifted if we take account of Raymond Monell's borrowing of Charles Sanders Peirce's concept of indexicality. whereby music's sign function points to the broader reference and emotional states it evokes. So the ideas and emotional states it evokes, it points towards them rather than it intrinsically embodies them. Now here is question 1. Which poet, according to Klein, was Chopin thought to have been informed by in the composition of the ballades, and perhaps especially the second one? So which poet was Chopin thought to have been influenced or informed by in the composition of the ballades, and perhaps especially the second one? So moving forwards, both Paul Cobley, who we've read, and Hillis Miller, who we've also read, are taken effectively to counter Carolina Barte's critique of past tense incapacity in music by noting the difficulty of maintaining a clear distinction between showing and telling, in other words, mimesis and diegesis. For his part, Michael Klein accepts the existence of a musical persona, who acts as the implicit narrator of the fourth ballade. However, following Edward Cohn, Roger Scruton, and Raymond Monell, he rejects the thought that this should be regarded as the voice of the composer. In other words, this persona has no distinct identity. So, question 2. How does Klein believe that this ballad should be read in relation to the other three? How does Klein believe that this ballad should be read in relation to the other three? And this is a word we've come across before, but now it's being applied directly. Question 3. Which two forms of temporality, following Raymond Monell, does he suggest are suitable for the interpretation of past and present? So which two forms of temporality does he suggest are suitable for the interpretation of past and present? So around about page 28 now, and at this point, Klein considers Robert Hatton's work. Robert Hatton teaches at University of Texas at Austin. So his work on musical meaning as a signifying phenomenon. But ultimately, Klein elects to resist a purely historical frame of reference in order to allow for a free play of interpretation. In other words, the context of production, when Chopin was alive, shouldn't be taken as the only applicable frame of reference. Here is question 4. Does Klein suppose that the ballades function as an orthodox sonata form? So does Klein suppose that the ballades function as orthodox sonata forms? He notes that the fourth ballade, in fact, shares a striking structural parallelism with the first ballade, with a particularly heightened recapitulatory phase he terms, following Edward Cohn, an apotheosis. So if we define apotheosis after Cohn and now Klein, it's really an intensified variant of a thematic component that was perhaps first introduced in a less striking form. And we could think towards the end of the 19th century, Mahler would be another exemplary composer in this regard. Bring back something which was perhaps rather unremarkable on first statement in a more intensified form. Beethoven too, of course. So now I'm going to end with 4 questions. So, question 5. Which two genre types tend to occupy this interior thematic role in Chopin's larger works? So, according to Klein, which two genre types tend to occupy this interior thematic role in Chopin's larger works? Question 6. Which additional genre type is representative of salon music for Chopin and hence 19th century urban life? Which genre type, additional genre type, is representative of salon music and hence 19th century urban life? Question 7. Which key area is reserved for the apotheosis statement in both first and fourth ballads? Which key area is reserved for the apotheosis statement in both first and fourth ballads? This is actually an idea he takes from Susan McClary. And the last question. Does Klein regard the end state of both ballads as representing a reversal of fortune or peripeteia? So, question 8. Does Klein regard the end state of both ballads, the first and the fourth, as representing a reversal of fortune or peripeteia? Okay, that is the end of this video. So I will post it and release it, and I think I'm asking for your responses by sort of midday on Tuesday, and that'll then leave just over a week to complete the final submission. So I hope that will be pretty clear. As I say, what I'm looking for is a synthetic summary. You could take each of the texts in turn. Remember, Natir essentially critical, Morse essentially positive, and then what does Michael Klein make of this composition? So what we've done today is to introduce the ideas that Klein is working with, then how does he take them forward and come to his own insights and conclusions whereby these pieces have a sort of narrative identity. So that's what I'm after. Please bear in mind that because the grading timetable is so strict, because of the needs for people to be able to graduate, there can't be any extensions or exemptions for this submission. So I do need to have your texts in by that particular time on Wednesday. So by midday Wednesday, it's critical that I have them then. All right, so sorry about that, but I think you'll understand as to why that should be. All right, well, thanks for all you've done in this course. You've stuck with it through difficult circumstances indeed. None of us wished for this, and hopefully one day it will all start to make more sense and we'll be able to live much more freely as we normally do. But for now, well done for actually maintaining your responses according to the timetable I've been trying to sort of put together, and hopefully you have gained something from all of what we've done. So I look forward to seeing your latest responses, and eventually we'll be able to meet again face to face. So bye for now.